Good evening, happy Thursday, and you know what that means. It is another episode of Make It Alexandria with Alyssa Kovach of Alexandria Makers Market. So, coming up rather soon in August is National Farmers Market Week. It is that first week of August, and you can find our guest tonight around some of the markets in town, like at the Delray Market in Pat Miller Square. So, our guest tonight is Eddie Gonzalez of Apothecary Spices. He's here to show us his immaculate line of all kinds of spices for all kinds of things. So let's bring Alyssa on.
Hello, Grace. Happy Thursday to you.
Yes, happy Thursday. Thank you for being here towards the end of the week. I'm happy to have you on, as always.
Thanks so much. You guys, I'm really excited tonight for our guest, Eddie Gonzalez. As you know, this is the show where I get to highlight amazing right here in our city. Eddie is one of the first people that I met when I was, starting out, and he is a spice blender, which I thought was so interesting. He does many things, but we also share a connection. I live at Episcopal High School. His daughter is an incoming freshman, so very, very excited for us to all get to know Eddie just a little bit better. So, Eddie, thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. So if you are a person of many talents, I know that just because you and I are friends apart from this, but would you just give everybody a little bit of a glimpse into who you are and how you got started?
Sure. I guess I start with, I grew up in South Texas, right near the border, very food-centered place with a lot of barbecue and a lot of meats that were always being grilled somewhere. But from there, I went to college in Rhode Island and kind of stepped away from those kind of cultural influences. But I got exposed to a lot of other types of food. I remember having my first taste of sushi the week after college graduation. There were a lot of foods that I had just never been exposed to. I still remember the first time I had lox with bagel and cream cheese, and Thai food, pad Thai. I still remember the restaurant, when I was there. So it was really a start of a lot of culinary adventures for me. From there, I ended up in DC with an internship with a science organization doing environmental education and science education work. But I'd still kind of maintain this side interest on exploring food and different food cultures. I went through several different jobs, went through normal 20s with a lot of my group of friends. Exploring DC, a lot of the different neighborhoods. We would end up in Adams Morgan a lot, doing a lot of late night eating. So again, for me, it was all just getting exposed to things that I never had a chance to eat and learn about. As time went on, I kept making my way through various nonprofits in DC, but ended up at a house that had a mainline gas grill. So we never had to worry about propane. It was readily available. And that's when I really started shifting from having to cook for myself in the oven or doing a lot of pre-made meals in the microwave to really starting to get in touch with what I was eating and being able to make it myself. That led to a lot of grilling, a lot of hosting of dinner parties. And I found myself gravitating to the same three spices: garlic powder, seasoned salt, and lemon pepper. And as I kept using them, I kept going right back to the same combination and finally realized, hey, I can just pre-mix this myself and make it easy when I'm cooking. Well, that turned into people asking about the spices, and then I started giving them away as gifts. That happened for a good 10, 15 years of just giving out this blend that I thought had a lot of uses, had a lot of great flavors. And that really turned into a business idea with friends coming up to me, asking, for refills. They'd move away, come back, and it would be one of the first things they'd try to track down. So, in between there, I got really into scuba diving. I've always been in the nonprofit field, so working for conservation and science-based organizations. And then with scuba diving, I ended up opening up a scuba club doing trips to Cuba and to the Galapagos. And then I also have chaperoned a number of high school trips to the Caribbean, just because it combines my love of scuba, my interest in education, and then the fact that I spoke Spanish always helped on these trips. So I feel like I've definitely had some nice, well-rounded experiences, but food had always been a component of it. Whether I'm traveling, eating at home, or visiting new cities, I love going to new grocery stores. I love seeing grocery brands. I love seeing how food is marketed. And then I also love seeing what the local ingredients are. Even when I'm traveling internationally, I'll do the museums and some of the tourist attractions, but I always find a way to end up at an international grocery store when I'm traveling. So that's kind of what brought me up to what I have now with Apothecary Spices and some of the things I've been able to do.
When did you mentioned you'd been blending these spices and of course have this passion and this background in cooking, but when did the concept of I'm thinking about turning this into a business, when did that occur?
Well, one of the things I was trying to a need I was trying to meet is the fact that as I was grilling, I wasn't getting the flavors that I remember growing up with. And it finally occurred to me that when I was home in Texas, grilling meant chopping down one of the mesquite trees in our backyard, burning down the coals and shoveling the coals into a grill, and pretty much just using salt and pepper on the food. And I wasn't cluing into the fact that it was the mesquite that was giving it all the flavor that I was looking for. So once I hit upon this recipe and this blend, I realized that there was a usefulness in knowing how this flavor combination could work. And because I was using it on all different kinds of meats, I felt that there was a commercial value to putting this out on the market. Some of it was, I was looking for something entrepreneurial. I'd always worked in the nonprofit field, wanted to do something creative. So this gave me a chance to be entrepreneurial, use my creativity, to market, to brand, to promote, but also create something that I felt like I'm putting into the universe. I feel good about my brand. I feel good about my products. I feel good about the feedback I get. So for me, the commercial aspect is just a way to sustain this passion. I'm not looking to trade in my day job, and think that this is going to, fill my entire yearly revenue. But I do treat it like a business because I think there's value in having others, understand what these flavors can do. And, if I use it every day, I feel confident that it, would really enhance other people's recipes. So that's what drives me.
Where did you get the idea for the brand name, Apothecary Spices?
So for the first blend, my first blend was called Eye of Newt. And when I was giving it out as gifts, it was really a way for me to, create this image of I am giving you a magical ingredient that you can bring into your kitchen. I was trying to captivate my friends that had already tasted it and, understood the great flavors that I had created. But I wanted something to add a little mystique to it. This was right around the time that the Lord of the Rings movies were coming out. So kind of fantasy themes were in the air. And, also just the physical act of pouring spices on a dish felt very neat to me. So Eye of Newt was the name of the first blend. And that, I really stuck or had that as the only brand for about 15 years when I was doing the gifts. But when I wanted to go expand this into a business, I realized that I needed, kind of a brand that would capture all the different flavors that I would be coming out with. And originally I had another name in mind, but, I did a Google search. I tried to see if the website was available, and that was already taken. So as I started thinking about options, the idea of an apothecary, just a trusted source. I mean, you could say that there were some variations of snake oil, that kind of thing being included in their inventory. But for me, the imagery of an apothecary is somebody that you would turn to for advice on some sort of wellness or medicinal or an additive that was really missing from your life. And that was really the imagery that I went with. From Eye of Newt, then I added a Wing of Bat, which was my herb blend. And then I wanted to do a spicy blend. So the imagery that I latched onto was a dragon and the breath of, just the sense of the heat that you might get from a dragon's breath. Because I didn't want it to be super spicy, but I wanted that hint of spice in it. As I started selling, I would get a lot of feedback that the spicy version wasn't spicy enough. And it really never was meant to be, but because there was a market for even spicier food, I ended up creating an extreme version and labeling it Dragon's Bite. Again, trying to extend that dragon imagery to something more intense. Adder's Fork was my pizza and pasta seasoning. So all of a sudden, this naming connection grew to all the different brands, and that opened up one of my first markets. I really started out by selling at Comic-Cons. And within this area, we've got Awesome Con, which is DC's main Comic-Con. And then there's a lot of regional ones from North Carolina to Richmond to Baltimore. It was a clientele that I felt would enjoy and appreciate this whole fantasy brand that I had created. And it worked really well for a while. I think at some point, the novelty of me being a spice vendor at a Comic-Con juxtaposed with the comic books and the other artists started to, I was no longer the unique person. There were a bunch of other craft industries that started coming in. So I was looking for a bigger market. And as I started contemplating the market beyond Comic-Cons, I realized the names, as I was interacting with regular people that weren't at Comic-Cons, they would start questioning, is this potpourri? Is it a decoration? Is it just something that sits on a shelf? So I was realizing I was having to get through a couple of different steps before I was even getting to how to use it in recipes. And that's where, I ended up last year as part of the pandemic. I used my downtime to rebrand and come up with more commercially friendly names. But a lot of my original customers still refer to them by their old Comic-Con names. And when they email me about them, that's still the name that they use. So I'm able to still maintain, new and old audiences with my spices, which is fun.
Well, that's really exciting for the rebrand, first of all. And just another great example of how that pandemic was put to some good use. And with that rebrand, yes, what are some of the avenues that you've explored since creating the new products, or how has that opened doors for you?
Sure. Well, the biggest thing is that now I'm starting to think about what other markets represent places where either certain types of my blends would find a home, or how to repackage them to find myself in different retail outlets. So, one example is my pizza and pasta blend is a really good all-purpose finishing spice. It's good to, you'd use when you're serving pizza or pasta, or you can put it in sauce. I've got a customer that puts it in bread dough before he bakes. So, just the utility of it and the fact that it skews towards the Italian food or the pizza type of menu items. I really hope that this could be something that I could package in the little go packets, and local restaurants might want to use it as a condiment in their, for indoor eating, and then include little pouches with all of their delivery orders. Specialty Italian store places that, cater to pizza and pasta cooking would be another great avenue on the retail side. And then, being able to have a local Italian restaurant using it in some their recipes also would be a really nice next step for me. And those are kind of the three main areas for all of my spices. It's something that could be used by consumers, so condiments at home, something that could be used by sold as in a retail scenario, and then an ingredient that a local restaurant or chef or someone in the food industry might be using. So that's with my pizza and pasta. I did also during the pandemic come up with 4 new flavors, and they're my popcorn season line. So I have a butter popcorn seasoning, and then a spicy version of my popcorn seasoning, and then I have a cheddar version of both. And this really came from the fact that a lot of my customers or my friends really that didn't cook a lot, they would really use my spices as a salt, and popcorn became their go-to. So I realized if that's a use and it works really well to season popcorn, I just added powdered cheddar and powdered butter to my seasoned salt and my spicy blend, and that's how I ended up with my popcorn blends. And again, those obviously, if I could get them as condiments in movie theaters or clubs, any place that has popcorn as a snack, that would be ideal. But also, I think this would lend really well to a specialty grocery store that deals with a lot of snack foods. So those are the kind of things I'm toying with, and then all the way up to, because I do a lot of hunting and camping, and always have my little kitchen set up when I'm out and about. I created these kits that I could have in my tubs of kitchen gear when I'm out, either at the campsite or hunting with friends. So my travel kit just has my go-to main 3 spices, which I call my Trinity. It's my herb blend, my seasoned salt, and my spicy blend. With those 3 flavors, you can kind of cover most of your bases. So if you have this in your cooking chuck box or camping gear, that's going to get you covered. And then if you want one of everything, you've got my field kit, which again comes in a nice little pouch. And then it just includes one of each of my different blends from my pizza and pasta, my bacon salts, and my grilling and roasting spices. So that, obviously a camping store, outdoor supply store. I'd love to get it into like local hardware stores that sell grilling equipment as either an add-on or something that they would get when purchasing an item, all the way up to approaching companies that rent mobile homes or RVs for vacationers, that it would be included in each one. So those are the kind of deals that I'm thinking of. I'm trying to figure out ways that I can take advantage of my diverse inventory and then just either repackage them or focus on their individual uses.
Well, and hearing some of your background and seeing some of your stories, it is very clear that you are an outdoorsman, but I love that you are not afraid to have those luxury items from home to make sure that you're really eating well.
Yes.
And I know that you had an experience with REI in terms of making sure you still had good food around the campfire. Would you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. A few years ago, REI had a contest where they were looking for people that love to camp, and they wanted people to tell their story about their love for camping. And this was all to do a photo shoot, basically. So I submitted this story at the time. My daughter was in preschool, going into kindergarten, and we had a group of friends that we had, were our little group of parents with all our kids hanging out together. I realized at one point that a lot of them had never been camping before. So I took it upon myself to, give them that camping experience, because I had been camping all my life. I love it. I love being outdoors. But I also love to cook. And I knew that I had to find a way to make this as comfortable an experience as possible. So I gave everybody a packing list. I divvied up all the meals. Everybody had all their assignments. So when they showed up, they felt that there was a support network for them to have this new experience. It didn't take long for them all to get hooked by the following summer, they were all bringing their own gear, showing me new things that they had acquired. But the camp kitchen was always the central point of our campsite. And we always had maybe 10 or 12 girls running around. So feeding them was always important. That really helped me develop my skills about volume cooking, especially volume grilling. So now it's very difficult for me to grill small portions. I feel like I'm always grilling family packs of something, even if it's for leftovers. But I kind of turned that into a story because one of the things about that whole getting these families out is I had a mother who was convinced that she could not sleep outside unless it was in a cabin. And year after year, she would decline our invites. And I finally got her out one summer, and the next morning she said she had one of the best sleeps she had ever had. So for me, the camping and camp cooking was all part of that, adding comfort to the experience. And when I wrote about that, I was one of 30 people that got chosen to go to Hawaii for a week on REI's dime. We used all of their clothes, all of their gear. And my job was just to camp for a week and have camera people following us around. So I got to grill for the crew, got to grill for all my fellow campers. And it was a great way for me to, validate that, I have flavors that you can enjoy in almost any situation.
I love that, and that sounds like that was an amazing experience. I've got to ask, we're seeing a lot of different items on the grill, and what are some of the favorite recipes that you specifically love? Not the crowd pleasers, but that you enjoy.
One of my go-tos, and it was because it was such a surprise to me, is my grilled okra. I went to a friend's backyard barbecue once, and he did a whole menu where the whole goal was no plates, forks, or knives, no utensils, no plates. Everything had to come from the grill onto a napkin, right, into your mouth. And one of the items that he had was grilled okra. And it's a really simple recipe. You just take okra, put it, saute it in olive oil, and either my grilling and roasting spice, my spicy blend, or my herb blend, really whatever combos you want. But the trick is to get the grill really hot. And what you're doing is putting them on the grill for such a short amount of time that you're crisping the outside, but leaving the inside almost raw. And you need to pull them out. The reason that they work well as an appetizer is the longer they sit, they'll start to stew within their own steam. And then you get the classic, a little more gooey okra that most people know of it. Which is not my favorite. So for me, getting them off the grill and served quickly is important. And then I make an easy dipping sauce of mayonnaise, mustard, and rice wine vinegar. You just whisk that up with a fork, and it makes a super easy dipping sauce. I like it because it's simple. You're taking a vegetable, that looks exactly like it looked like from the ground, doing very little to it, adding a little heat and seasonings, and it'll blow your mind. So for me, that's one of my all-time favorite go-tos, as simple as it is. The other thing that I cook a lot, I do a lot of steak, I do a lot of chicken, but one of my other favorites is lamb chops. I'm a big fan of lamb as a meat, and then lamb chops, again, it's like cooking little lollipops, basically. It's a fun item to expose people to that haven't had lamb because it's unique enough, but it's still a red meat, so you're not cooking something that's really, really exotic. But I find that it's just a fun item to serve, especially when you're hosting people, if you want to impress. Beyond that, I cook a lot of flank steak, a lot of fajitas, meats that really can feed a lot of people. So family packs of chicken legs, my own chicken wings. I don't do a lot of sauces, so when I cook my chicken wings, I'll use my spicy blend for the heat as the main ingredient, and then maybe throw some Texas Pete on it afterwards. But those are kind of my go-tos.
I know you probably shouldn't have favorites, but out of your product line, do you have one?
I do, and it's interesting because it's not my biggest seller. my favorite is still the spice that started the company. My main grilling and roasting spice. What started out as Eye of Newt. For me, it's still the flavor that my tongue remembers when I want to season anything. It's always a question of, is it my grilling and roasting spice or something else? So that's my go-to, but my biggest seller is my spicy blend. I took my grilling and roasting spice and added chipotle and white pepper to give it the heat. And chipotle is a chili that's made by smoking. So you're going to get some smoke flavor added to it, which gives you another layer. And then the white pepper for me is a great ingredient, and not a lot of people use it. I love pepper, but black pepper starts to get too earthy and too pungent. Versus white pepper, you really get a lot of the spiciness of pepper, but it's cleaner. And for those that don't know, white pepper was one of the secret ingredients in Kentucky Fried Chicken's original recipe. It was one of those 23 herbs and spices that people could never figure out. So for me, there's a uniqueness there as well. So that's my biggest seller. The other one that I'll kind of highlight because it's the only one that doesn't have salt. So for customers that really can't have sodium, this is a go-to. And the reason I like it is I use a citric acid-based lemon pepper in all my spices, which may not seem like a big deal, but lemon pepper comes in two different varieties. The citrus either comes from citric acid, and I'll explain that in a second, or it comes from lemon oil or lemon peel. So lemon oil and lemon peel still adds citrusness, but you're going to get a little more sourness and a little more earthiness to those combinations. It actually doesn't taste as citrusy as if you've ever had like Sour Patch candies or any sort of margarita mix, any sour mix, anything that's got that puckery citrus flavor. It's usually coming from citric acid, which is a crystal. So for me, that citric acid, it hits the same parts of your taste buds as a salt would. So when you're using my herb blend, that citric acid is going to give your tongue kind of a false salty taste. So it's still that gives you that kind of intense flavor. And the other thing about it is I use cumin, which is a very familiar spice. Anybody that's ever eaten Mexican food has likely tasted cumin as a flavor, but it isn't a spice that people traditionally cook with unless you're cooking a Mexican recipe. So for me, adding that to the herb blend, it gives it a familiar taste. Savory and sage are the other two flavors. So when you're cooking with it, you'll immediately smell home cooking kind of smells coming out of the kitchen. It reminds you of seasonal meals, of being back home for the holidays. There's a lot of olfactory memory that comes from my herb blend. So I enjoy them all, but yeah, I will say my grilling and roasting is my favorite.
Eddie, it is very, very obvious to everyone watching, and to myself included, how passionate you are about your cooking and about what that represents in terms of friends and family and community. So I think it takes it to a different level there. And I don't know about anybody else, but I am definitely hungry after having this conversation. And luckily, I actually have some Apothecary Spices here at the house. So I'm excited about that. But for those who are at home watching, would you tell them the best way to get a hold of you so that they can go and get their own? Where can they find you around town?
Sure. For the next 2 weekends, I'll be at the Delray Farmers Market down in Delray. I am working a deal to do a pop-up at a local Pilates club. I'm getting some interest from local trainers to really highlight the fact that if you're grilling and roasting, and cooking with spices, you're tending to not be cooking food. The whole health story about getting back into control of what you're cooking and the kinds of ingredients that you're using. So I've had some trainers reach out to me about doing pop-ups at some of their clubs. So that's another interesting opportunity. Also on my website, I do ship anywhere in the country, but for local orders, there's a code you can use that zeroes out the shipping, and I arrange a contactless delivery, usually within a day or two of receiving the order. And then I'm still looking for other venues to sell both retail and either farmers markets or weekend pop-up events that come up. So, if anybody knows anything, I'm always interested in or looking to add more dates to my calendar. But the website and, at least in the near future, the Delray's Farmers Market on Saturday mornings is a good place to find me.
Well, that's perfect. I mean, that is easy to find. And so you guys, everybody needs to go and check out, first of all, Eddie's website, but second of all, just go and make sure that you pick up your spices and stock up because it's still grilling season for several more months. And so perfect timing for that. So Eddie,
sure.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate just you sharing a little bit more about yourself and for us to get to know your brand a little bit more. And so I look forward to intersecting with you at an event at some point in the near future. And thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. You guys, I hope that you will go place an order right now because it really is very delicious and, of course, made with a lot of love. And I just wanted to give one little shout out for Alexandria Makers Market collaboration coming up this weekend. It is Christmas in July at Lost Boys Cider. We will be there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There are different venues each day. And so it's going to be just a really fun time. Lots of festivities, of course, and a cup of good cheer. They're bringing back some holiday flavors, and that their cider is amazing and delicious. So we're really looking forward to that. Make sure you stop by and say hi. And in the meantime, you guys, I just appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for supporting local. Make it Alexandria whenever possible, and go be the good news in someone's life.